Andy. How's it going?
Good. Hi.
Hey,
All right. Cool. Hey, how's it
thanks.
going?
Great, man. How are you?
I'm good. Thanks.
Thanks for doing this. Appreciate it.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah. So our podcast is about your journey in the music industry and how you got to where you are today.
Love it. Love it.
Cool. So Andy, I did see, are you originally from Austin?
Yeah, I
Now
grew up in
Portland? Okay.
Yep, grew up in Austin, Texas, but live in Portland. Have lived in Portland for about the last 15 years. So, yeah.
Okay. Sure. Right on. Well, how'd you get into music?
Well, growing up in Austin, it's hard not to.
I was going to say, you grew up in
It-
kind of a music town there, didn't you?
Yeah, it's just sort of in the water. So, yeah, my family always encouraged music. Not like, my parents both, we grew up, singing in church. My mom played a little piano and a little guitar. And so there was always music playing at the house and lots of singing and stuff. But, yeah, I sort of found it, sort of discovered that path actually as a kid. I did my obligatory music lessons, my piano lessons as a
Mhm.
6 and 7-year-old. But then I decided I wanted to do some acting. And I was in a citywide production of Christmas Carol in Austin at the Paramount Theater.
Wow,
And
that's cool.
and the guy I was playing Tiny Tim, and the guy who played Scrooge he would entertain all of the kids in the cast backstage. He played fiddle, and he was this amazing Renaissance man named Robert Roudier. And so in between rehearsals, he'd play fiddle for us backstage. So I decided, I was like, oh, cool, I want to play fiddle. I want to play violin. So yeah, like third, fourth grade, I started playing violin, did school orchestra, realized that guitar was a lot cooler. So transitioned over when I was about 13. And then, yeah, just been in bands, sort of did the whole like punk rock thing in
Mhm.
high school and then sort of switched over to like bluegrass and folk in college. And yeah, just kind of have kept on that path ever since.
Wow. Okay. So tell me about, you said bands in high school, punk
Yeah.
bands. Would you just play
Yeah.
around Austin?
Yeah, lots of high school parties, lots of house parties and stuff like that. But we did get to play at some, there were a few cool venues that were kind enough to like let, 5 high school bands play on a Tuesday night or something.
Sure.
So I got to play at Emos, which is this kind of legendary.
I was going to ask you
um,
if you've played emos.
Yeah.
Okay.
I got to play Emos, grew up going to like Liberty Lunch and that kind of era. Stubbs. But yeah, okay, like got to play Stubbs once, did Emos once, then just like some restaurants and coffee shops that somebody's mom owned, and lots
Sure.
of high school parties. But it's so cool. I went to Austin High, and I was there at the same time as Gary Clark Jr. was a year behind me.
Wow.
That guy Shaky Graves. I think he started the year after I graduated. There's like lots of legendary Austin musicians. This guy Warren Hood, who's like a fiddle player, band leader. Susanna Chaffel. There's like all these amazing musicians that I just like went to high school with, and we were all just kind of like doing our goofy, nerdy high school things. And then like you turn around one day and you're like, oh, hey, there's Gary Clark Jr. He's a big deal now. So
whoa, that's
yeah,
crazy. So did you know him? Like,
I mean,
growing up?
we like acquaintances. We weren't like we weren't tight or anything, but
Right. But still, that's rad.
just to sort of like have shared space with that level of musician was pretty cool.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
Wow. How awesome. Did you, like outside, you said you went to college and started the bluegrass folky type stuff. So tell me about like the musical transition. So you're playing in like, you said like you've got to play emos and Stubbs and stuff like that, but like that was just kind of high school.
Yeah.
You go to college, and then did you start another band? What was next for you musically?
Yeah. So I left Austin in 2001 and moved to California for college. I went to college down in Southern California. And
that's where I'm at. Where did you go to college?
Oh, cool. Pomona College in Claremont, California.
Oh, Pomona.
Not in Pomona itself, but in Claremont, there's all these colleges there, and Pomona is one of them. So yeah.
Okay, because my sister went to Pomona. She went to school. Where did she go? She went to the Pomona version. Oh, San Luis Obispo, Cal Poly, but she went to Cal Poly, Pomona.
Yeah.
Pomona. Okay.
Different. This is like a small liberal arts school. Mostly we just like played on campus, but I got to play at the Glass House once. Do you know that?
Oh yeah,
venue?
I do know that venue.
Yeah,
that's
so,
rad.
Like, mostly we played on campus, but we'd do little bars and stuff sometimes too. But yeah, sort of, so all along, I think even in high school when I was doing more like of a punk rock thing, my influences were like kind of roots rock, rockabilly, surf, got into more kind of honky tonk stuff. So then it was just then it's just been sort of a natural, like I've sort of moved I just move up and down that lineage, I feel like. So, I feel like there's kind of a direct link between sort of rockabilly and punk rock, just like super simple, fast, energetic rock and roll music. So I just kind of like went back a few generations to kind of the like fast-paced bluegrass stuff. Started exploring more of that, kind of folky music in college. In Claremont, there's this really cool little guitar shop. I don't know if you've ever been there. I think it's called the Folk Music Center. It's run by Ben Harper's family.
Wow, that's
His
cool.
mom, I think, and brother owned the place. So it was cool. There was like a hub of lots of like folk music and stuff going on there. But I just kind of did it was just like a rowdy college band, but mostly on acoustic instruments. So, and that got a little more electrified and folk rock as the time went on. And then, moved to Portland after graduation and moved up with a couple of bandmates and had my grown-up band in the Portland scene for 4 or 5 years, playing venues around town and having fun with that. But then about 10 years ago, I sort of combined, I was working with kids at the time. So I decided like to sort of meld the music stuff I was doing with the work I was doing in education and start performing for kids and families. But
I was going to ask how you made the switch.
Yes.
You were working as a teacher?
Yeah, I was working in an after-school program and at a community center, and they were looking for some like evening programs for families. And I was like, I'll just like, I don't know, learn some folk songs, and I don't know, build a puppet or something. And so I started doing that, and like immediately I was like, oh my gosh, these are my people, because I've always been like a real energetic and kind of like interactive, participatory sort of band leader. And that worked great like in college in this sort of like tight knit community where we were playing for all of our friends. But I start playing in like indie venues in Portland, and everybody's just sitting there with their arms crossed, and I'm like, okay, everybody sing and clap along, and they're just like, who's this yoo-hoo? So when I started performing for kids, I was like, oh, that's the whole point with kids. They're just like eager to interact, and they're just like kid mosh pit wobbling around, not too dissimilar from like a bunch of drunk college students. They're just they're just 3 and can't walk very well yet. But that energy just really worked for me, and found it was a great fit for the sort of interactive stuff I was doing. But also I'd kind of done a deeper dive into old folk music, because I'd always sort of grown up with a lot of Texas singer-songwriter stuff and blues and bluegrass, and heard that music, but I hadn't really didn't have an education in sort of like all the roots and branches of American folk music, and so I did some self-study where I got an old Alan Lomax anthology, an old Carl Sandburg anthology, and just taught myself 100 old folk songs. Wow. And what really was discovering was there's this whole strain of these animal folk songs that have always been sung for kids, but kind of had these weird, dark elements to them. It's sort of that old weird America you hear Grail Marcus talk about and early Dylan stuff, just these kind of strange stories that almost always end with one of the animals being eaten or killed, or, and I'm this is kids music. And so I was just really fascinated by that. And I think in the same way that a kid's author, like Maurice Sendak or somebody, or Roald Dahl sort of taps into that, there's a darkness in the in a kid's imagination, and kids are kind of fascinated by mortality and by life cycles.
Well, if you look at even old kids stories and nursery rhymes, they're all violent.
Totally. So I was like, whoa, this is so I was really interested, just from a sort of adult creative intellectual standpoint, interested in these old songs. And I was like, well, I can start adapting these old songs and performing them for kids, and they're they're kid songs, so it's okay, but I can talk about this deep stuff. And so and it's sort of at the same time I was just getting into I'd met some awesome puppeteers and puppet builders, and there's not surprisingly in Portland a thriving puppetry scene.
Sure.
The film studio Leica, that's done Coraline and a bunch of those stop motion films. I had some friends who worked there and did kind of puppetry style stuff there, and met some other folks who were self-employed. And it just so I'd started building some puppets of these animal characters from the old folk songs, and I was learning and adapting, writing new lyrics and, kind of my own adaptations for the old songs. And so I just kind of packaged it all together and came up with this alter ego, Red Yarn. And yeah, and started performing for kids and left my after school job to sort of like dive in full time to this. I guess that was between 12. That was about 8 years ago that I went full time with it. And yeah, so
Wow.
I've just been like doing the kids thing since then, which is awesome. And I feel like I get to, when I, I try to, especially when I'm recording albums, I really try to approach it just like making the music I want to make. I keep the language and the topics like kid friendly enough, but I also I delve into some, try to delve into some real like kind of social emotional territory with it. And yeah, it's so I'm able to, I've found people are always like, so do you have a grown up band too to like get those impulses out? And I'm like, no, I just sneak them all into my kids.
Yeah. That's funny.
So I'm able to, like, I find it like totally creatively fulfilling. I'm like getting to tell the stories and write the music and characters and build this little world. It's like, that's all I want to be doing. It feels like it's been a really great fit. And I feel really lucky to have found it.
Yeah. And I did read that you said the newest record that you just put out is the first one that you wrote and wrote everything on, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's the first all original. So it's my 6th album. And, kind of given that the whole Red Yarn project started with this exploration of old folk music, my early albums were really heavy on the folk songs. So I'd, find these traditional, like public domain, old folk songs. I took a lot of creative liberties with them, like wrote a lot of my own lyrics,
rearranged them.
Yeah, rearranged them. I loved, one of the things I did early on was I would find a song like in an old like print anthology book, and maybe it would only have the melody like written out, and so I'd like learn the melody, but then I would just like kind of come up with a new chord progression underneath it that sort of like aesthetically matched my like
complement it. Yeah.
So but it would kind of give it like an unexpected twist based on compared to older versions. So so my early albums were like mostly all traditional folk songs, and then as it's progressed, I've sort of introduced more and more original material into my albums. But yeah, this was the first one. The one before was about half and half, traditionals and originals, and then this one I was just like, I reached a point, I had a few traditionals I was working on, but then I had like 10 original songs, and I was like, oh, just write a handful more originals, and I'll just make it all original. And so I've always been a songwriter, and I've always loved songwriting, but the Red Yarn project, since it sort of started off as this like self-education around folk music, and then my sort of desire to
kind of like a hybrid of it all,
and to like teach kids the old folk songs is still like a central part of the mission, so I've tried to sort of like humble myself as a songwriter. It's not all about like, a lot of the Red Yarn project has been around like shining a light on these cool old dusty like forgotten folk songs, but it's cool, it's fun to like kind of tap back into my songwriter self and do a record of all originals. And it's definitely like my most rockabilly album yet. And I was in my high school, like in the sort of like doing the like punk rockabilly thing as sort of like a return to form in that way. So that's been fun.
That's cool. And then when did you start implementing, like, I'm looking at a picture of you playing and it looks like a Western set. You've got like a bunch of puppets on stage. Like was that all from like 2012 when you first started it, or is this newer?
Yeah, so the puppets have always been a part of it as long as it's been Red Yarn, because I mean the sort of idea, I created Red Yarn as this like sort of traveling bard sort of figure, poet, singer, but like who had this connection with the animals. And since so many of those folk songs I was originally learning and adapting were like about animals, I sort of developed a little performance style where at least when I'm performing solo, I'll do like a skit with, I'll do the puppetry myself. I'll do a skit with one of my puppet characters. We might like have a little conversation. We might tackle like a social emotional issue for kids or something. And then that will segue into like, so I do a little, skit with a rabbit puppet, and then I'd sing an old folk song about a rabbit. And then I'd do a skit with a snake and sing a song about a snake. So it's sort of like, so I developed this whole cast of characters, but then as time has worn on, they've sort of like, they definitely have taken on a life of their own. And so with all the original songs now, I've sort of woven these characters into these, original songs and stories too. So yeah, you might be seeing like on my website from like when we've done big album release shows, I'll get like a whole puppet troupe basically and full band. And we've done full shows where it's like, 3 or 4 puppeteers puppeteering during the songs with like a 7-piece band playing. So, I mean, that's always sort of like the grand scale dream. So we can sort of scale it up to that, or just do these solo shows where it's just me and, you know, I'm going back and forth between guitar and puppets, or I do a lot of duo shows with my wife, and she'll sing and she'll do some of the puppetry too. And, but then also we do a lot of video work, because I feel like that's been like a perfect medium for us to do these kind of elaborate music videos where the puppets are like fully brought to life. Puppeteers are hidden, you know, it's sort of like we're fully in that world. So yeah. And, you know, and just for performing for kids, it's awesome to have that visual component of it, to be able to like calm the show down, you know, because like when I'm performing, it's usually like pretty upbeat, energetic, like I'm on my feet dancing, singing, the kids are dancing, singing. A lot of the songs are sort of like movement based, and so to have a chance like in between every song or two to like sit the kids down, I do a little puppet skit. They talk to the puppets, you know, they're interacting with them. I can sort of inhabit these different personalities, you know, so I've got like a really shy squirrel who the kids all connect with because it's all, you know, tiny and vulnerable and they see themselves in it, you know, or I got a real like brash, impulsive rabbit, or like a wild and crazy dog, you know, so I get to explore all these different personality types and these social emotional issues. So yeah, it's just sort of like over time, it's just like I've sort of developed this little, you know, this routine and how to weave the two elements together, and it works great. It's super fun.
Yeah, that's cool. Yeah, I was seeing on your Instagram like photos. It looks like from a photo shoot where the guy has like the green on his arm, like to key it out and everything.
Yeah.
Was that from like a video shoot or something?
Yeah. So we got to do. So I've done like a number of music videos also that we able. So the most recent album, Backyard Bop, I recorded it back in like January, February, March, right before the pandemic. So luckily, like we had kind of most of that in the bag, but then I had all these grand plans to dive into a lot more video work, to do music videos for the album, but then also to like, I'm working on a new little web series of just like a YouTube, you know, short, you know.
Yeah, I was seeing that. Yeah.
But to go, you know, kind of going back and forth between music videos and live performance videos, and then these like little social emotional stories with the critters. So, yeah. So the nice thing is, because like the new album's Backyard Bop, the series is called Red Yarn's Backyard. So it's all set in my backyard, and we built out these set pieces and got all these new puppets for it and stuff. And so despite the pandemic, we've been able to kind of keep that going on a real kind of stripped down skeleton crew scale, with just a couple of puppeteers and me and my wife and a filmmaker. So we've been able to keep that moving, shoot a bunch of do the photo shoots for the album, and do all these new videos, and keep it safe, you know, like do the social distancing and be outdoors. So I feel very lucky to kind of like have the plan was already for that all to take place in the backyard and not in the, you know, shopping mall or something.
Sure. Yeah. So you already had that concept, was already the thing.
Yeah.
And then COVID hits, and it didn't really even.
Yeah.
Didn't really matter.
Right. So we were able to like keep the album on track and do all these videos and continue to do them. So I feel like incredibly fortunate to be in a position to keep creating in this way, you know?
Yeah. Are you guys doing like a weekly, monthly, like performance thing, like supporting the record?
Well, I've been doing a lot of live streaming, like, you know, like a lot of people kind of quickly pivoted over to that. So I had been performing during the school year. I'd do like 3 weekly shows in Portland at various like ballrooms, cafes, community centers, and families would just kind of like come week after week. Like, an interesting difference between like kids music and grown-ups music is like, you know, if you're playing for grown-ups, you probably don't want to play in your town more than like, you know, once
a month or
or something like that. For kids, because they're like, they thrive on that consistency. They would come to, you know, kids like get into it. They would come every day. I could do the exact same set every day, and they would be, you know, pleased. They would be totally pleased. I'd only vary it just to like keep it interesting for the grown-ups. But I had all these.
Well, yourself too.
And myself. Yes, thank you for reminding me. But yeah, so I had all these weekly shows. So I just kind of started doing live streams on that same schedule on Facebook Live and Instagram Live. And then over the summer, I went down to 2. So I've been doing 2 a week live stream, and I kind of like sort of like rebranded that as like a little series. So I've been doing a show called Homespun from my living room twice a week, and now I'm about to sort of like wrap that up. I've got like 50 episodes of that we've done.
Wow.
I'm about to wrap that up, and I've actually got now access to a little studio space going on with a buddy, a fellow kids performer here. And so I'm going to start doing the streams from there. So yeah, trying to keep like do live stream stuff to kind of like keep that like ongoing interactive relationship going with these families. But then also releasing this other, you know, pre-recorded video content too, you know, and there's, I mean, as everybody is like struggling with the kind of financial side of it, like, you know, cause I guess I was in a position where I already felt like with my regular shows, I was doing this very like community supported thing anyway, right? So like families were used to coming to my shows each week and just putting $10 or $20 in the donation jar. And, you know, I was able to like build that up and make it lucrative enough. And yeah, I mean, when the pandemic first hit, people's generosity was just like overwhelming. I was like blown away. And then I think as I anticipated over time, viewership and donations have definitely gone down, but it's like, how do you, so, you know, and I'm sure a lot of musicians are like asking the same question is like, do you keep just like putting it out there for free and hoping people are going to, you know, jump on your Venmo or Patreon, or do you, you know, because the opportunities to do like, you know, sponsored shows with a guarantee are just like so few and far between right now. So yeah, man. So I'm just trying to keep on creating and keep on staying connected with the families. And like, you know, the great thing about the Facebook Live is like I can watch the comments during the show and shout out the kids who are watching and take requests and shout out kids' birthdays and show off their artwork and, you know, keep it like, even though it's disconnected, like keep it very intimate and connected. So yeah, I mean, but man, it's a brave new world trying to figure out how to keep it going.
Yeah, I know. It's like, what's the $1 million idea that's going to, you know, be the next like live stream type thing that will catch fire, but I guess we'll have to see. Yeah. I love the video for the Backyard Bop though. That was really well put together. Like you guys just shot that yourselves? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. So I've been working with, that was shot by my friend Lockie Caravias, and he's done a lot of our video content over the years. And we sort of, he's like a world traveler. He does like a lot of documentary kind of stuff. He's got a film he did with a company he works for called World Vision, which is like a kind of world aid kind of organization that's like now like in the, you know, in the like film festival circuit, and is like, you know, has been, it's not like been nominated, but it's like qualified to like be in the, you know, for their Oscars and stuff like that. So he's like an incredibly skilled filmmaker, and he'll like, we sort of lucked out. He was supposed to be leaving the country in April, but then COVID kept him in Portland for like a little bit longer. So I just like milked it for all it was worth and got like 7 more videos done with him. So,
oh, wow.
So, I mean, he's just kind of like a one-man film crew. He you know, he shoots it. We kind of like, we do all the like sort of direction and planning, like is real collaborative, but then he shoots it himself and edits it too, and we make it look like he's gotten real handy with like doing kind of composite shots where you like lock off a shot and you can have, you know, so one take going, you know, the right side of the screen is from one take and the left side of the screen is from another. So we were able to, even with just two puppeteers, we were able to make it look like there's like 10 or 15 puppets.
Yeah, because it looks like a lot of stuff's going on. I mean, even in the like the album teaser video, you've got the birds and then like the baby birds moving. Yeah, it looks like you have a whole crew there of people.
Yeah, it's just, you know, trick photography and like clever editing, and you know, if you don't show show all the characters at the same time, you can really fill out the world. So
wow, that looks great. It looks great. I love what you're doing.
Thank you.
And then this is going to be like you're doing like episodes of like a television show type thing too.
Yeah. So it's all kind of related. Yeah, the album was Backyard Bop, and then the new series is called Red Yarn's Backyard. So it's sort of like just the album stuff leads right into the series. But yeah, it's going to be more just little mini episodes. Some of them will be music videos, but then I'll try to do some of the same kind of like narrative, social emotional conversation kind of stuff that I do during my live shows, but you know, in the backyard with the critters, like better produced, pre-recorded and stuff like that. So yeah, just kind of trying to keep getting it out there. And you know, the idea is that like the first season of little mini episodes would all together kind of be like the length of like a, you know, pilot for a kid's show. So, you know, I think the big dream is always that like, you know, we'd get
Nickelodeon
Nickelodeon or Netflix or, you know, Amazon or something like that. That's like, that's the pie in the sky. But in the meantime, just to like be in a position to keep creating. And it's been awesome. So
That's amazing. Yeah, I love what you're doing, and
Thanks,
and
man.
the puppets look great.
Yeah.
The videos look great. So
Thank you. Yeah.
very cool. I have one more question for you.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for chatting with me today, Andy. I really appreciate
Yeah.
it.
Thank you for having me, Adam. It's been awesome.
Yeah, I have one more question. So I want to know if you have any advice for aspiring artists.
Yeah, gosh, advice for aspiring artists. I think the biggest, I kind of twofold things for me that have sort of made it so I could have like a sustainable career in music was, number one, like really finding my niche, like realizing that like, oh, this connection with kids, like this is like, this fills me with joy. Like these are the people who I want to be performing with. And then just sort of like taking that leap, like leaving my old job and like diving in. Now, like, this is a terrible time to be giving people their advice to like quit their job and become a full-time musician. But, but I think like that leap of faith element is huge, like, and I love and appreciate, I mean, there's so many sort of like hobbyist musicians and so many people who are doing it as a side hustle or, are keeping down their full-time job. But I do think, at least in a more stable economy, that like being forced to just like, how am I going to piece this together, and really like look at a music career holistically. It can involve teaching, it can involve performing, it can involve recording, it can involve all these different things. So yeah, I mean, I think at a certain point you just got to like take the plunge and like spend all your time doing it. So I feel lucky that I've been able to do that.